Hello, this is FennéCrafts, or Anna if you prefer, and I know this isn't really like my normal uploads, but I wanted to try out this concept for a while, where you get to watch me build a thing, or create a thing while I talk about other things, like art advice, fursuits, business, and whatnot. And I've been wanting to do these types of videos for a really long time now. I just never really figured out when the right time to start was, but I just recently hit 10,000 subscribers, and I'm really excited about that. Thank you so much. And hopefully this new video will be something that, I don't know, something the new people can enjoy, rather than just seeing an occasional video pop up where you see a suit that I've built. In this video, you'll see me building the Sherbert links while I speak about something very familiar to me, commissions! Why I now hate them and what I've learned in hopes of helping you learn things too. DM. Working title. Still, if you're not interested in hearing me talk and you just want to watch the time lapse itself, feel free to mute this video and just play whatever you want in the background. Hopefully I'll get more used to talking. I don't normally talk in my videos much, so my voice always sounds a little shaky. But hopefully I'll get more used to it as time goes on. I wanted to start off with a few personal stories about each year that I took commissions, from the first year that I did until now. How commissions worked out for me and what I learned from them, and why I really hate them now. Each time I've ever taken a batch of commissions, I feel like I was taught a lesson about something that I should have done differently, but I never really noticed any of those red flags or those, lessons till years later. But hopefully by me telling you these stories, they'll help you if you wanted to start taking commissions. I first started taking fursuit commissions back in January 2016. I charged $400 flat with no shipping costs for a mini partial. That is a head, hands, and tail for those unfamiliar. Looking back now, I feel like that was a bit low even for the time. I had already been making suits for a while, and I was selling pre-mades, but I did feel like that was what I was worth at the time. And I only ever sold over eBay, which is a whole nother story that I'll talk about later, but it does explain why my first custom commission came from eBay. It was the only place I really had people who liked my stuff. It was also where I learned that eBay is terrible for custom orders. Their length to ship an item, I think, was about 4 weeks, so long-time custom work was nearly impossible. So I would have had to build the suit first, and then hope I still get paid afterwards. Luckily, I had a true responsible buyer. If I remember right, the mother was buying it for her kid, and the process went pretty seamless. I was contacted and asked if I possibly did custom work, and while I hadn't yet at the time completed any custom work, I kind of felt like people, hey, if they were asking and they were willing to pay, I might as well try it. So my first commission was this Siamese cat known as Vincent. It was quick and easy, and I enjoyed the process. But I said that I'd never take another commission over eBay again, and that ended up being a lie. I also filled 2 slots that I was offering over on Furfinity at this time. It took me 4 months to complete them both, and after everything I probably made a profit of just like a couple $100, which I had probably spent already at that time anyway. Nothing necessarily went wrong at that time, but I feel like I probably should have noticed some warning signs. The clients were both nice, from what I remember, but I realized that I was a bit too much of a people pleaser, where I should have said no to some requests, and that is the first lesson that I did not learn. For example, I was given an example of a different fursuit maker's style and asked to try and replicate the smile that they had, which I feel like I failed at pretty terribly. But at the same time, I should have just said no to begin with, because it would not mesh well with the rest of my face, like my face's style. Same goes for the color. I did all my faces with minky minky fabric at the time, and the color they wanted didn't exist, so I had to dye it. It may have existed, and I may have just not known where to find it, but it was back when I used to use paint to dye everything, and it would sometimes come out very blotchy, and that was a bad idea. But the main thing I wanted to take away from this was the smile thing. I should have said no. There's no way that that type of smile would have looked good with the suit, and I do not think that it came out well at all. The client loved it, which I guess is good, but at the same time, I should have said no. I used to brag that I would never turn down a design, and obviously unless it was like copyrighted or stolen or something. And I never had turned down one at the time, but it would be something that would haunt me in the future. Still, even then, I feel like I kind of got off easy in 2016. Even a couple of months later, I went back on what I said about eBay and took another commission over eBay because it was easy money, and it was probably the easiest commission I'd ever taken. It was another mom who wanted a fursuit for the kid, and she wanted a simple corgi with 2 different color eyes. Did not take long, and it was probably one of the smoothest transactions I'd ever had. But I did not learn anything from that, and I probably should have taken it to heart when that blue suit did not come out up to my standards. I wouldn't take commissions again until August 2017, and we think that maybe over a year and a half of improvement and getting a little more business savvy, that I might have changed things up a bit and learned how to turn down a commission if I didn't think I could do it. And maybe I charged a little more because I was offering a whole mini partial, but nope. That's not what happened. I raised my price a grand total of $100, still with no shipping charges. So, lesson number 2 to take away from 2017. I did not learn to charge my worth. This would have been a good year to learn that. I'm going to do some math to help get you an idea. My suits back then were a lot more niche. The style was very hit or miss, but quality-wise, I was told that they were very well constructed. It cost me about $200 to construct one, and shipping was about $50 on average, so I'd make about 50% of what I actually charged, or $250 per suit. Keep in mind, I charged the same thing for pre-mades as well, which was less effort and less consultation with a client. So that was pretty bad. I made 18 suits in 2017, and at $250 in profit for each, that's about $4,500 for a whole year. And that's less than what I could have made working at like Burger King for one summer. And I was 21 in 2017, or around 21 or something like that. I definitely could have gotten a quote-unquote real job. However, what I made back then was just enough to earn me 1, gas to visit my boyfriend a couple times a week, and 2, to buy gifts for my friends and family during birthdays and holidays, which were the only things I really cared about at the time. My dad was covering gas to college, and I didn't have to pay rent, so I didn't really need to learn to do anything else. So that lesson also went over my head more. I should have charged more, and if not just for commissions, pre-mates too. Like, or even if I didn't do it for pre-mates, at least for commissions, because they take a lot more effort. They can end up being really complex, and they take a lot more time because you have to continuously consult with the client. But I did not charge anymore. On top of that, we have a bonus lesson from 2017. This is when I began the terrible habit of working myself to the nub on a deadline. And I would make promises for deadlines that drove me insane, specifically Halloween deadlines. And I hated every second of this. For the last week before Halloween in 2017, 3 suits were struggling to make it out on time and to the buyer's house before the holiday. I got to the point where I was calculating how far away each client's shipping address was and how long it would take to get to their house on time if I used the fastest shipping option they had. They were all partially complete at the time, and so at that last week, each day I would wake up before the sun got up, work all day to finish one of their orders until I had an hour left before the post office closed, photographed it as quickly as I could, packed it up as quickly as I could, and then floored it to the post office, because that post office closed at about 5 o'clock. And I repeated this for 3 days straight, aside from the last one, which never went out, but I'll talk about that later. But this was a very miserable time. I did not feel happy every time one of those was finished out. I just felt like I could rest. Like, I would come home from the post office and just start cleaning because my room had become a wasteland with all of the work supplies out all over the floor. And you might think, hey, You made yourself sick doing this. You should probably, you know, not make this a common thing, right? No. It made it on time. That's what matters. So if you want to do it again in the future, that's okay. No, it's not okay. Please don't do this. I hate that I developed this habit. I also, during this time, took my first trade commission hybrid for a character called Kalichio, or Xylee, I think was how they preferred to pronounce it. 80% of the suit was dyed, and it was all sewed by hand, and in the end I think I got like $50 out of it. But honestly, it has like my favorite memories built up into this suit, and it resulted in like my favorite and best Anthrocon trip that I had ever had, and I loved it. I was exhausted and working for days straight with no sleep, but I probably wouldn't change any of it. However, associating those good memories along with the painful non-stop work countdown going on, it kind of gave me a false positive association with the bad behavior. And I'll get more into this near the end, but all the good feelings that I would get upon finishing it, which would be like maybe staying up with a friend in order to finish it, or seeing the client be really happy that they would get it on time and stuff like that, it kind of overwrote the bad feelings that I would get, and that made it all the more likely that I did not want to stop doing that, where like I didn't feel bad for doing stuff up until the last minute and hurting myself in the process, or even hurting the work in the process, but it made it way more difficult to stop. But I'll give you another example of that near the end. 2018 July. Again, I took mini partial commissions for a whopping $600. Still very, very low. Though at least this time I charged shipping. It was also this time I changed my style kind of drastically. The flat face look disappeared, and I learned how to make a rounded off head, finally, and I never looked back. I should have taken that as an indication to maybe charge more, but I did not. But that's not the lesson that came out this year. This time, it was the people-pleasing thing, but times like 1,000. You remember how I said there was a suit that never got shipped back in 2017? Well, it did actually get shipped, but it ended up coming back. It was this blue poodle, and it was a $500 flat commission. It originally looked like this, and I was very, very sad when working on this suit for the second time. I didn't tell the client that, and it wasn't their fault by any means. They just wanted their suit to look nice. But I was struggling with this suit every time I picked it up. When it was completed the first time, the buyer had asked for a more smirky expression, I think. I don't fully remember what they asked for. And I tried my best to get them what they wanted, but I lacked the skill set in order to do that. It didn't come out like how they wanted, and being the person I was, I offered to redo it, and after a year, and this was free of cost, by the way, I did this free of cost. After a year, it managed to come out like this. They also wanted the tail propped up, which, if you didn't know, is difficult for poodles because gravity exists. But I tried really hard to get it right, and in the end, I still couldn't do anything more than a generic happy expression. I fixed, like, structural issues. The tail managed to be propped up after I built a full-blown back brace, which is why it kind of looks like the tail is raised up a little bit. And it fit a little tighter and stuff like that, and I think it looked way nicer overall, but it didn't come out like how they wanted. And I beat myself up for that for a long time, and I just felt terrible about it. But at the same time, when I was thinking about it, I don't think the fact that I charged $500 for this mini partial means that the buyer should have been expecting miracles. And I don't think, if you're a maker who charged very little for something and you can't quite deliver what that is, I don't think you should feel sad for not being able to perform that miracle. I put myself down a lot for not being able to get it right, but I shouldn't have felt that bad when I was charging less than what some people charge for feet. At the time, $500 was a lot to me, and I'm sure it was a lot to the buyer, but I wasn't up to par. And I feel like now it was more of a you get what you pay for kind of thing. Because you should always try your best, and you can even offer to do better if they come back asking for that. But don't beat yourself up if you can't do things that you aren't charging qualified prices for. I didn't attempt my first non-generic happy expression outside of a commission until 2019, and even then was a happy grump. Expressions were a long way off. So, in the end, I don't expect to get everything when you are only able to offer $500 worth of work. Maybe if it was $500 for just a head, but it was a mini partial and there was a lot of extra details that you wouldn't normally have had. Like, I wouldn't have normally offered all that hair and those types of ears and the back brace and everything. I tried my best, and the second attempt was for free. So maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe it was another time where I should have just said, no, I'm gonna have to refund you, I can't do this. But at the very least, don't put yourself down because you can't get it just right, especially if you're not charging, like, you know, up there type pricing. Moving on to 2019. 2019 was where I learned more about just different types of commissioners and how much they can differ from each other. Some are very laid back, and they will kind of just let you do what you think is best as long as it matches the ref. Others are very strict and will ask you for adjustments for nearly every whip you send them. Now, that's not bad, of course. They're paying for custom work, and they deserve to get what makes them happy. However, you can make things easier on both of you if you just go about it a little smarter. I'll give you an example. I had a commissioner who wanted lavender and light blue freckles on their suit. In order to do this, I had to mix up a specific color of airbrush paint for both the lavender and the light blue because it didn't already exist in a bottle. And I had to do one color at a time. And when I sent them a photo of what I had several times, I'd be asked to add 1 or 2 more freckles of the specific color onto the head in a specific area. Usually this would be a couple hours after I sent the whip. So I'd have to mix up more paint because the old paint had dried, matching the same color I did before, and then re-cleaning the airbrush again in between each photo. This took a long time and was frustrating, and it used up a lot of paint, but I would have been able to save us both time and save myself paint and cleaner if I had just sent them a photo of what I had to begin with and said, hey, just put a colored dot on all the places you'd like me to add freckles, and then I can add all the extra freckles you want. And I would have only had to do that like one more time. That thought never really came to mind. I think once they might have sent like a photo, but I remember this happening multiple times. And it probably would have been easier if I just said, hey, go ahead and draw out where you'd like each new freckle. So yeah, work smarter, and you'll save both of you lots of trial and error. 2019 also began what I consider to be the start of digging myself into a commission hole that I've yet to dig myself out of. I was beginning to pick up traction on Instagram, and I was feeling confident, and I was eager to work. I would be getting married that year, moving in with my husband, and I wanted to save up money for my move. However, I still had commissions from 2018 in order to pay for expensive car bills that were leaking into 2019, so I couldn't just take on more. But now that I had more bills to cover, I also had to keep doing pre-mades, so the commissions took longer to do. This is when I learned that that probably was not a good idea to take on more orders when you already have some waiting. Did I have a choice? No, not really. It was the only way I could make money and to pay things off, but at the same time, there had to be a better way to do this. But at that time, I didn't have any other way to do that. 2019 goes by, I managed to not save any money by the time I finished paying off bills, and I start 2020. Freshly married, but also fresh out of money, still needing to finish commissions I took in 2019. However, I was bill-less, which was good, but it turns out that would only last for a few weeks. And the universe said, no, you're not going to be able to manage that this year. We were hit with a very long string of bad luck in 2020. Outside of the world's problems going on, which I'm sure you know if you exist, it was terrible for everybody. Our little inner bubble was also having a lot of problems. I can't really talk too much about it, I can't, like too much of what's going on, because it's, you know, personal, it's our bubble. But while my husband was busy dealing with problems that were going on around our house, I was dealing with things like our pets and doctor bills. During the year, I kept getting sick, not with, you know, that sickness, but with other things. And I would have to pay a couple $100s every time I'd go to the doctor. Between January and February, our dog Penny had jumped at our bay window and cut up her foot and some tendons. And then a month later, unfortunately, she was hit by a speeding truck. Vet bills for everything were a couple $1,000s, including her emergency vet where she had passed away. And her death was really difficult at that time for both of us. Then my cat Whisper, who was elderly, began getting older and weaker, and her vet bills came in as well. And as the pandemic went on and people started losing their jobs, I had clients coming to me for refunds because they could no longer afford to finish paying off their suit, or some had fully paid it off and then still needed to be refunded. This meant I would either have to cancel their order and refund them out of pocket, which I didn't really have, or fill their slot with someone else who could immediately pay in full in order for me to refund them. Also, just to note, I had never filed taxes before, so I didn't qualify for any of that government relief that was going around that year either. As you know, I had just gotten married. This was my first time ever living away from home. I had always lived with my parents before I got married, and it was in the same house since I was about 5 years old. So this was my first time experiencing anything like this, like just being away, and I would describe the feeling as just being very alone, because I was in a completely different environment and away from my parents. And even though my husband was there 24/7 and my parents only lived 20 minutes away, I think the difference was just kind of shocking. It's like taking a fish out of its bowl and then dropping it into a bottle or like a container of ice water. I don't know. That's the first thing that come to mind. This was also the start of the pandemic, so more people were like, I don't know, we were less desensitized. We were all just kind of terrified, so we never left the house. I had to order everything online, which I already hated, and I couldn't hug my parents, even though they lived like one city away. Our honeymoon was canceled, several family trips were canceled, and everyone was just stuck inside, and it was a very particularly cold and rainy spring where we lived. And in my attempt to try and make things feel more like it did when I still lived with my parents, I took it upon myself to cover all the holidays and try to bring stuff in to make things feel livelier. This basically translated it into spending way over my budget for things like Easter, buying useless junk that I didn't need, and starting what would become my greatest disdain, pre-claims. Also, I'd like to mention, when I say buying stuff for like Easter, we don't have any kids in this house, so I'm not doing it for somebody that like really needed the holiday. It was all for like 20-somethings. We probably could have done without a lot of that stuff, but I wasn't used to not having it. Anyway, pre-claims, it's basically a fancy word for letting a client buy a character design ahead of time and building a suit based on it later on. At the time, every time I sold a pre-claim, it felt really good. It was an instant bundle of cash, and I didn't see it as a commission because the design was already one that I had picked out. So I justified taking on more of them. It was my answer to not being able to take on more commissions. I needed money for bills and stuff, and so I said, yes, buy them. And this was probably the worst idea I had ever had. On top of taking commissions when I already had commissions, this would eventually break me. During the latter half of 2020, I was still broke, still stuck in a cycle. Orders of all kinds were piling up, and I was getting all the more overwhelmed the end of summer was probably the worst time of my 2020, personally. I was extremely angry and sad all the time. My work suffered a lot because of it too, and because I'd be rushing to try and complete things. People would be messaging me asking for whips, but I wouldn't have anything because normally I'd be working on some older order and I wouldn't have anything to show them, and that made me feel worse. Or I had been doing some sort of pre-made, which looks even worse on my part. But during this time, I didn't really have a way to vent to anybody because I felt like, obviously I put myself into this situation and I felt like it was my fault, and it was my fault. And I cried on and off and felt like I couldn't really do anything about it. I just sort of hid in my workroom 24/7. At one point around fall, I kind of finally broke down to my husband. I couldn't handle everything that was going on, and something just sort of snapped, and I told him what was going on. And that was when I learned lesson number... the heck, what number is this? Point is, I learned a lesson. You're not a burden for having to ask for help. Sometimes you can't handle everything on your own. I did put myself into the situation, but that doesn't mean I can't, lean on people for comfort when I try to fix it. When you're married, you're supposed to support one another. That's kind of the whole thing. I needed that emotional support. But I had let things get really bad, and I felt terrible about it. But I think the relief of telling him what was going on was... It gave me clarity to kind of see just how bad things were. I immediately sold nearly all the designs that I had purchased with the intent to later sell them as pre-claims, because I did not trust myself to try and not sell them later. Like, I was holding back because I was like, I can't sell these anymore, but I don't think I had the self-control not to do that, so I sold them all off. And I used the money I made from that to try and refund some people on smaller Q items. Like, I had like plushies, I had paws and some tails and trades and stuff, and I tried my best to keep doing cute items the best that I could, and would try and limit pre-mades and stuff like that. And I wanted everything to be done by Christmas. However, 2020 was not quite done beating me up. At the end of the year, my cat became very ill. She was losing weight incredibly fast, and multiple trips to the vet later, we discovered that she had cancer, and the tumors were growing very fast. She dropped so much weight to where she was about... I was told she weighed 4 pounds, which was the equivalent of like me at 5'4" weighing 60 pounds. And I still felt like I was relying too heavily on my husband. I'm way too proud for my own good. It's difficult to say that you need help. But needless to say, I did not finish my queue by Christmas or New Year's. Though I did manage to cut it in half, which I was okay with. But at the end of January this year, I lost Whisper to cancer, and it was really tough because I had never lost a pet before, and I had owned Whisper for around 14 years at that point. And she was probably the only pet I'll ever have, like, considered to be a fur baby. I'm not someone who likes to look at pets like they're people, but Whisper was my special baby, and I wish she was still here. So basically, going into 2021, things still aren't very good, but Q-wise it is better. I'm down to 2 pre-claims from like 8 and a handful of commissions left, and that already has made me feel much better, and I'm grateful that everybody had been so patient. And I do not have high hopes of taking commissions again anytime soon. It's made me miserable. 2020 as a whole, like, left a really bad taste in my mouth that I associate with commissions. And pre-claims. I do feel like it wouldn't have been so bad if 2020 wasn't so terrible, but at the same time, my time management skills have always been garbage, and I have that bad spending problem that I need to curb. And I don't want to rely on taking brand new orders to have to cover that. I also don't like getting... I feel like getting paid before work is done is forming a bad habit. So if you are waiting around to see me hoping to get a commission for me from when I open again, you're probably going to be waiting a while. I have no idea when I'll be open again, and I just want to finish what's left and be done with it so I can finally feel peaceful again. And I really just don't like taking commissions. They don't make me happy anymore, and I don't think they really ever did. So, in conclusion, if you choose to take commissions, here's advice from things I've learned. Lesson 1. Learn to say no if you're uncomfortable with a request. Also, I'm not sure if this was considered rude back then when this happened, but I'm pretty sure it is now. If someone asks you to make your suit or art resemble another maker's style when they're purchasing from you, please don't feel in any way like you have to do that. Your style is your style, and if you want someone else's look, they need to go there. It's not easy to just cherry pick your favorite parts from other makers and mash it into what your already predetermined style is. It doesn't usually come out right, and it kind of feels a little rude. I didn't see it as rude at the time, but I've heard nowadays that people say that that's kind of rude. Second, whether it's for fursuits or some other type of art, it's fine to charge a small amount if you want when you're just starting commissions, even if you've already had a lot of practice in. I would just suggest bringing up your prices at a faster pace than I did. You shouldn't be barely bringing in 50% of what you're charging when it takes you months at a time to build. And if you continue to charge lower amounts, don't beat yourself up when you can't give them everything they ask for. Try your hardest for sure, even offer to revise it if you feel like you can do better. But keep in mind that your buyer should not expect masterful tasks when you're charging what's considered to be like eBay-friendly prices. Third, just because you can barely make a deadline by the skin of your teeth does not mean you should keep repeating that habit. If you had to work yourself sick just to get an order out on time, that doesn't mean you should keep doing that. Either set a less strict deadline or don't set them at all. After 2020, I can't manage to keep track of squat, and I will probably never do deadlines again if I do take commissions again. And I know sometimes that rush of adrenaline can be exciting, like when you're finishing it, when you're up late finishing work and you manage to get things done. Maybe you're up late completing it with a friend and it feels like you're having a fun little sleepover. But trust me, it's not worth it. It should be a last resort, not a common practice. And I wanted to throw in an extra example here. The very first time I had finished orders, like, on time, it was like an order and I already had a personal suit and it was for a convention, and I was ahead of schedule and I was done. I had a full day to relax and not freak out, and I didn't even know what to do with myself. I felt like something was wrong because I wasn't staying up all night trying to get stuff done. That's not normal. Also, if it's for something like a convention, you run the risk of making yourself sick right before you go. Another example, back in 2018, I was trying to keep myself healthy by getting a good night's sleep each night, drinking more water, less caffeine, and I was eating better. I was doing really well for like a month. And then 3 days before FWA, I decided to make myself a new FennéCrafts suit. And I stayed up super late, overdid on caffeine, and my friend Suji and I built a full suit of FennéCrafts in only 3 days. Also, at this time, I was practicing for a dance competition, so like I was exercising and jumping around every day too. I was exhausted, and I got sick right at the start at FWA. But obviously, I wasn't going to miss it, so I hopped up myself on cold medicine, carried some energy drinks with me 24/7, and enjoyed myself. That's not a good idea. You might make other people sick. By the time I got back, I had to go to the doctor because I had thrown my body so out of whack that it thought I was experiencing some sort of like catastrophic emergency. I had an issue where I could not stop having to pee. And the doctor said that I basically put my body into like a panicked shock. And I had to retrain my bladder to act normally again. I wasn't even sick. I wasn't infected or anything. It just, my body was so confused that it tried to make me lose basic functions. It took a couple days to get it back again, and it was annoying, and it scared me a bit. Fourth lesson. Every client you get is going to be different, so if you dealt with one, consider the second, third, and so forth to be an entirely new experience. If you have one who is extremely difficult, also do not become impatient with them. Customer service is very important, even if it's online. I'll save the talk of being your own HR and PR team for a different video, but please never lose your temper and understand that a lot of clients just know what they want, and they are very eager to get it. If you're frustrated, try to take a step back and just think of an easier way to get them what they want. The fact that Instagram, for example, lets you draw over images that you can instantly send to the person you're talking to is great. Let people give you outlines, color charts, explain to them that while you can offer what they're asking for, it's going to take a lot of back and forth to get it just right. They may not know what it takes to get something just right on your end. And when you do get an easier client, just take a moment to be thankful for that. Finally, 5th, don't overload yourself. I understand sometimes you have bills to pay, things come up, things get bad. 2020 was especially bad for everyone, but please try to budget for these sorts of things if possible. And it wasn't just bills and important things I had to pay off. If I had not purchased so much junk, I might have had an easier time getting through this. I wouldn't have had to take on so much extra work. And I'm still trying to curb these bad habits, and if you have something like this, you definitely need to do that too. So far this year, I have actually resisted a lot of pointless purchases. I stopped buying so many new adopts. I made myself work extra hours if I did want to get something that wasn't completely useless, like new bed covers or some furnishings for the house. And I'm probably going to be canceling Easter this year because I am still the only one in this house that ever purchases goodies for it. And when it's 4 people, that can be a lot. And just to give you an example of how bad this spending habit is, at the end of 2020, when things were pretty much, they couldn't get much worse, I still felt the need to make sure everybody in my family and friends group got a $300 budget for their gifts each. And that I have a lot of people to buy for. And there's no good reason I should have had to do that. And it's not something I'm forced to do. They never feel the need to do that for me. Nobody is forcing me to do that. I just felt the need to do that, and I don't know where that came from. Like, my dad had given us gifts early this year, and he always just gave us cash. I immediately took that cash and went and bought a gift for my brother, and there was no reason I should have done that. It was a bad idea. There's obviously some problem there. So I'm actually thinking of just giving total control of my bank account over to my husband so that I don't have a way to touch it. I don't think I can manage it well, and I need to work on that. And again, none of this is for even like a little kid who would like be so confused if they didn't get presents for Christmas. All these are 20-somethings or 30-somethings, 60-somethings. They would understand if I didn't get them anything. But yeah, and please don't feel like it's bad if you need to ask for help or even just to vent to your loved ones. They love you and they want you to feel safe and happy. And also, outsource if you need to. It helps a lot when you have some extra hands. Don't feel bad also for having to cancel or refund people. They would rather have you be honest and refund them versus leaving them in the dark. And I wish I could do more cancellations now, to be honest, but I do feel kind of sad for having to ask that. I've asked some, and then they got sad, so I relented. It's just a hard lesson to learn overall, but once it's over, I know I'll feel all the better for it. And if you're in a similar situation, you'll feel better once the weight is off your shoulders. And once it's over, maybe then work on time management skills, getting those in check. I have to do that. That's what I plan to do, and hopefully I can finally cut out my useless spending as well. Like, I don't know, maybe I don't need so many pointless things. Oh, and yes, pre-claims are just commissions with a planned out design. Don't lie to yourself like I did, please. I hope that what I've talked about today helps you in some way if you plan to take commissions. It's definitely been very cathartic for me to talk about this, and I've really been wanting to talk about this for a long time. And hopefully once my queue is completely cleared, I can come out with a new video telling you about how lovely and relaxed I can finally feel now that I'm free of that. Hopefully, because I still feel pretty miserable, and I just want to finish this stuff and get it over with. And hopefully fix the bad habits that I already have. Thank you guys for watching my first little craft and chat video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you again soon with another video. Bye!